Hi, my name is Rochelle and you're listening to Box F1 Pod. So apologies for the awkward timing of this episode. I've started a new job and now I have to travel a bunch, so I wasn't able to do the debrief for Canada on time and I won't be able to do the Austrian Grand Prix in time. So I decided to do like an in-between episode where I prep us for the Austrian race, talk about what happened in Canada a little bit, and do like a whole digital warm-up about everything that's been going on in the F1 world. I'm very sorry. I should be back on schedule right after Austria, back for Silverstone. There have also been other changes if you're watching this on video, because I had to get a new light, and I have glasses, and it is a ring, and now I look insane. So sorry for the eyes. If anyone knows what light I'm supposed to use so that my eyes don't look like a crazy person, like I'm in a Bugs Bunny cartoon, like, woo. If anyone has any suggestions, I am all ears because this is not ideal. Anyway, as I said, we're going to do a proper digital warm-up followed by like a quick Canadian GP highlights section, and then a little Austrian GP track walk and predictions, and I've got several. It's a bit of an unorthodox lineup, but still should be loads of fun. So if it's not the middle of the day, grab your wine, and if it is, grab a coffee. And without further ado, it's time for the digital warm-up. Lap 1, off the grid. Some fun things that happened over on social. Mercedes posted some outtakes from a promotional video they were doing with George. And it was amusing in and of itself to watch George try to do this, and it made me feel a lot better about how many outtakes sometimes this podcast takes. But they did catch a moment in the recording where Pierre was walking by and he said something to George, and then George asked when he could get one of Pierre's new Liked by Pierre Gasly t-shirts, and Pierre said that he would hand deliver one to George, and George was like, yeah, I can't wait. It just made me laugh though, because the way Pierre talks is just like automatically flirty, even when he's not. Like, even when he's like, yeah, I'll get you a t-shirt, it just sounds flirty. You know where he would thrive? The Love Island villa. Like, he would be quality content in the Love Island villa. I've started watching Love Island again recently, so it's like top of mind, but he is top tier. If anyone's watching Love Island, by the way, there was a George at the very beginning of this season who actually gave me so much George Russell vibes. You know, they're both George and British, like truly, like, I was like, I feel like this is what George Russell would act like in the villa. Anyway, moving on from Love Island. There was another hilarious video posted of Lance walking through the paddock and like all the media trying to talk to him, and we all know how Lance feels about media. And so he's like sort of like nodding and like kind of smiling, and he walks into the hospitality for Aston Martin, and there's another camera in his face, and at this point he's like irked, so he like looks over to see who has a camera like shoved in his face, and it's Fernando Alonso like pretending to be his paparazzi. It was very cute. It was hilarious, and I think we got a picture. Someone posted a picture, I guess it was Aston Martin or Fernando, of the like zoom in of Lance's nose that Fernando captured. It was very funny. I love their relationship. Anyone who says that Fernando is like sucking up to Lance to like inadvertently suck up to Lawrence, I think is just false. I think Fernando is a great guy who gets along with everyone unless you're like all up on his grill on the track. So that could change. I just don't think it will. And also Lance seems very receptive for Fernando, whereas Esteban I think was a bit like, I don't need your help. Whereas Lance is too nice and just like lets Fernando do whatever he wants. So I think they're a really good partnership. I think they're a good friendship. And I will get more into like my opinion on Lance at Aston Martin, because those opinions have been circulating rampant in recent weeks, and I have thoughts. But before, I also want to mention a video of Charles and Carlos that they did, where they were asked if they watched Drive to Survive, and Carlos immediately goes, "Only my episodes." And Charles is like, "Oh my god, you're so selfish." And Carlos is like, "I want to know what they come up with." And Charles is like, "Yeah, I do that too." like held on to that for like half a second. It's like, yeah, I also only watch for myself. I'm pretty sure they all do. They have probably zero interest in Drive to Survive. Although I would want to watch. I want to know how everyone else is portrayed. I don't know. I think being in the gossip wouldn't stop me from wanting to hear how the gossip's portrayed, you know? But I'm not famous, so who knows how I'd feel if I were. And just a quick shout out, not a video, but Valtteri Bottas posted a picture of him on holiday where it's just an incredible shot of his bare butt in the middle of like a Finnish lake, and it's iconic. Anything where Valtteri's butt is on display. I just realized his entire last name could be just butt words. Butt ass. Is anyone gonna come for me for that pronunciation? Butt ass. He's the new Kim K. He is the Kim K of the F1 world. No one has a butt like Valtteri, and no one owns his butt like Valtteri. And I just like can hear Scott Disick in that one clip from the Kardashians when Kim was like, I think I want a butt reduction. And he was like, you can't get rid of your butt. You get rid of your butt. We get rid of our paychecks. And I feel like that really is applicable to Valtteri now. Also, I can't stop staring at like the circles in my eyes. Please, if anyone knows how to get a light that will not make that happen, I will be eternally grateful because I look wackadoodle. Whack-a-doodle. Isn't that a sound? That is a sound, isn't it? Anyway, this is an unhinged episode already. Moving on. Lap 2, hot takes and rumors. So up first, Dax Shepard. So Dax Shepard has been like all over my For You page with his opinions on F1 and the drivers. And I think he has his own podcast, obviously, but he was on another podcast. The Red Flags one? I might have made that up. He was on a podcast. I will link the clip so you will know which podcast it is. But anyway, the first thing he said was where he was talking about something that he was asked who he thinks would be great on screen. And he immediately says that Charles Leclerc would be a great actor if he had reduced speaking lines. Hilarious. I too think that Charles would struggle with scripted lines. It would take several takes. Not a dig at Charles, but like, he's there for his looks, isn't he? Not for his ability to deliver and memorize lines. He also said Yuki would make a great comedy star in like a buddy cop comedy situation, which I love. That is great take. Great take. Another thing he was asked is who he would not want to leave his wife alone in a room with. And he said that he believes that Carlos is the most ferocious lover on the grid. It's a wild ride with that tiger. That's a quote. I didn't come up with those words on my own. And here's my thing. I fully agree with him because I think Carlos has the perfect like recipe. He is a gentleman, but he is also Spanish. And the Spanish have Riz for days. But then obviously the whole Riz thing brings up the follow-up question, which is like Pierre has Riz, right? So like it like radiates off him. He drips Riz. Who has more Riz? Well, I think there are different types of Riz. Really breaking this down. Carlos is more of like a silent assassin. Like you don't see it coming. His Riz is very subtle. Pierre is also definitely not a gentleman. Does not pretend to be. Like cough cough, Mr. Tripod. And also like he's very overt in his Riz. Like we all know it's coming. Whereas Carlos is in fact a smooth operator. That is a great way to describe him. He is spot on. He's been telling to us for years. But that brings me to the next caveat I think that we need to take into account, which is that we have never really seen Carlos single. So we don't know how he's going to move necessarily. But I really don't think anything's going to change. I think my sub-take off of Dax's take is accurate, that he is a silent assassin with his Riz. He's got charm and suave for days because of the whole Spanish thing, but he's a gentleman. So he's going to move as a single guy exactly how you'd expect him to move, you know? Okay, moving on. Gareth Bale, the Welsh footballer, was asked if he was an F1 fan, and he said that he felt out. He was doing like some golf thing. He's retired now. He was doing some golf thing with someone who I probably should know who he is, but I don't. And he was asked if he likes F1, and Gareth said he had fallen out of F1, out of love with F1 after Abu Dhabi, because like he doesn't think that Lewis was treated fairly. And after that, like, he also said, like, the integrity of the sport was, like, lost and all of that stuff. And then hashtag F1XED, like, F1 fix, started trending again. And people got re-annoyed about this. And, like, I understand why people are annoyed, you know? I understand the issues. I understand being frustrated with the FIA. I understand, like, the vague interpretation of rules and how entertainment seems to trump the integrity of the sport, which is fair enough arguments. What bothers me about all of this is that, like, it's sort of being, like, taken out on Max. If Lewis and Max were reversed, what, Lewis wouldn't have, like, pushed it just because he was on fresh tires to get to the end because he didn't want to, like, ruin the integrity of F1? Obviously not. Anyone in Max's position would have done the exact same thing. It's natural to be annoyed at Max as, like, a sub issue, but they were matched up evenly. It did create a spectacle, so F1's attempt to do that succeeded, and it's still being talked about. Whatever, like, I get being frustrated, but I don't think you need to disregard the entire sport because of that. Lewis hasn't. Lewis is fighting, and he's still trying to win, which I think he will. He will for sure get his eighth. Which one are we on? Eighth world championship before he retires. I fully believe it as soon as this Mercedes car gets its shit together. So I think if Lewis has put it behind him and is like fighting to see another day, everyone else can take a chill pill and move on. You know? It's been 2 years. Let's keep things moving. But I understand why people are upset. Please no one come at me. Okay. Lawrence Stroll. So this was before the Canadian Grand Prix, but Lawrence Stroll said in an interview that he thinks that, first of all, there will be 2 Aston Martin podiums in Canada. Didn't happen. He also thinks that Lance and Fernando will be equal by the end of the season, which he said as as he was explaining why Lance had worse performance than expected in the last few weeks, which he obviously, to me it was obvious, apparently was not obvious to anyone else. He attributed it to the fact that 6 races ago, he had surgery on his wrists, and one of them didn't get surgery, so who knows how that's healing. Like, his wrists were smashed into a million pieces, and the toe! Like, guys, I'm just, like, shocked that it needs to be explained, and that people are like, fire Lance immediately, like, he's not performing at all. Like, give the man some space. It is hard to recover from an injury. It is hard to know how your bones will heal. It is hard to know what's going to happen. Sometimes this, like, recovery process is even worse than the initial moments, you know, because it's like this annoying, dull ache. Something might go numb. Something might happen to the nerve. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going on with Lance's hands. It's unfair to judge his performance fully on just him being shit, which I think is, like, vehemently unfair, especially since so many of the issues he's had in the last few weeks were down to bad luck. And maybe I'm just being like a Lance apologist, but I truly think people need to give him a break, like Lawrence is doing. And Lawrence is all about business. If Lawrence is willing to give Lance a break, because I still think that he would put business above Lance in certain instances, if he's willing to give Lance that like grace, I think we all should. It just pisses me off. Like, obviously it's going to be a difficult recovery. It's not been that long for something of that magnitude. But I do think that he was a bit generous in his assessment that he will be equal with Fernando by the end of the season. I'm not quite sure that's a feasible thing for most of the grid. Fernando is in a league of his own in many respects, but I do think that he will be much closer to Fernando by the end of the season, for sure. He will be fighting in the top 5. Guaranteed. Assuming his recovery continues to move forward and he's not set back. But speaking of Lawrence, there was one more thing that I need to say. It's an incredible update. I've been waiting to give this update for so long. But Father's Day, Chloe Stroll wished Lawrence a happy Father's Day and posted a bunch of pictures from the wedding to her story, which, to be honest, such a fucking relief. Such a fucking relief, because like I was honestly like the question of whether Lawrence attended was still hanging over my head. Yeah, we got the little shot of him in the corner of something where there was a big man with a white beard and we're like, that's Lawrence, but now we know for sure. And guys, the pictures were so cute. Lawrence is literally crying in all of them. It's just such a relief that he's a good father, you know? At least to Chloe, he's a great father. And also, I think my friend Lexi pointed out that they were probably trolling us at this point because the pictures were great. They could have easily made it into the million of wedding dumps that we got. Strolling us. Get it? Anyway. Rest assured, I can firmly confirm that not only did he provide his credit card and his yacht, he also showed up and cried a whole bunch. Love this for Lawrence. Love this for me, that I can continue with my narrative of Lawrence that I built in my head. All right. Moving on, the FIA. So, some hot takes from the FIA was that way back at the Barcelona GP, aka like 2 weeks ago, Neymar Jr., the footballer, was apparently like stood on the grass at the edge of the grid as the formation lap was starting, which is like, if this was 1965, that would be child's play. It's not. We take safety very seriously now. Can't even climb fences to like cheer someone on. I'm being very dramatic. It's probably a good thing that we don't want people standing so close to moving F1 cars, especially since we now know that there are apparently 3 drivers on the grid with terrible spatial awareness and could have easily flattened Neymar Jr. in seconds. Shout out George. Anyway, so the FIA will be reconsidering how they approach the grid walks and what safety precautions they will administer now to make sure it's more safe. Honestly, I don't know why this is a discussion. I feel like it's very obvious what needs to happen. They just need to end the grid walk earlier and not start the formation lap until everyone is off the grid. Duh. Like, how is this a conversation? It's such an obvious, simple fix. But then again, the FIA doesn't, like, believe in easy, obvious fixes. So, TBD on what's going to happen with that. I really hope they don't get rid of the grid walks in general, though. That's, like, a huge part in getting people involved, and, like, seeing Brundle, like, accost celebrities is important for us in this culture. Anyway, some rumors that have been circulating all around. Silly season rumors are in full swing despite it being, oh, it's June. So it's like a month earlier, but still. Some seats are like potentially actually threatened. Some are just people being dramatic. But here's a brief rundown of whose seat is being questioned. So Nick DeVries has not really improved his performance. So his replacements are still rumored to be Daniel Ricciardo or Logan Lawson. By the way, Logan Lawson sounds like it's the secret identity of a Marvel superhero, doesn't it? Anyway, I still think that Nick should be given some grace since it's his first year in F1. AlphaTauri sucks ass, so like, let's give the guy some breathing space and not threaten to take his job away every 2 seconds. Because I can't help performance either, can it? Like, if someone's been like, you're gonna be fired if you don't do better. I don't think I would do better if someone told me I'd be fired any second if I don't improve, you know? There are also rumors that Logan Sargent will be replaced. His performance has also been subpar at best. Both of them have not scored any points yet. But also Logan, particularly compared to Alex Albon. But again, Yuki's also outperforming Nick DeVries, but both Logan and Nick are in their first year in F1 with a shit car. Room for grace. Come on, guys. Also important to note, however, is that Logan was hired Logan. Liam Lawson, Logan Sargent. Okay, sorry, too many L, like, white boy names. So Logan Sargent was hired before James Vowles came on as team principal, which means that there's rumblings that there's a lot less loyalty to Logan than there might have been otherwise. The rumor that's had the most traction is that Mick Schumacher is going to replace Logan Sargent, and Mick also said in an interview that he'd be glad to come back, which is like, I feel like jumping ahead a little too much, because like, while I would obviously love to see Mick back on the grid, I'm also like not a fan of replacing people in the middle of the season, or at the very least before summer break. Like, it just seems unfair. It seems way too like trigger happy, like, especially when it's rookies with like 6 races and a shitty car under their belt. Like, let them grow, let them get comfortable, you know? There are also like a good jillion rumors that Checo is gonna get the boot, which is just so annoying to me. Like, yes, he's had a subpar several races, but he also won a race, which is, he is the only driver this year to have won a race besides Max Verstappen. Yeah, that has something to do with the fact that Red Bull is incredible, but he also did, so let's not discount that. What's also annoying though is that both Christian and Dr. Marco aren't like discounting the rumors. Like, they're not discouraging people discussing this, you know? Which is so them. They love to shit stir. Dr. Marco especially. Dr. Marco is like unhinged. But like, whatever. It seems like Checo's potential replacements are Daniel and Yuki. They're the most talked about, at least. Daniel, reserve driver. Yuki, I don't think he's ready for the second seat at Red Bull. I think it's going to take a long time for anyone on the grid to be ready for the second seat at Red Bull, because I do in fact think that Checo fully belongs in the D2 spot at Red Bull. So anyway, I hate these rumblings, and I hate that Checo has to go through this every fucking year, because it is deeply unfair and it cannot possibly help anyone's performance. It can't. Checo did get very cocky at the beginning of this year. Coupled with that, like, that's a whole bunch of pressure that no one wants to be under, you know? And then obviously there's Lance Stroll, which I touched upon a little earlier, and everyone's like, Lawrence has to make a decision, blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, he does not have to make a decision. Lance is still recovering from major surgery. He should be doing better, but again, most of the issues have been down to like bad luck, and also, again, he's not in his top form. I know it sounds like this entire section has been me like being a major apologist for drivers performing badly, but like, I just really think everyone is way too trigger happy to replace people, and I think they should be allowed to like marinate a little bit. Just saying. Okay, moving on. Lap 3, the adventures of an F1 driver. So here's what some of the drivers have been up to in the time we've been away. So before Canada, Charles went to Le Mans, 24-hour race, for anyone who doesn't know. By the way, my uncle is a huge like watch fanatic, and his wife got him like an exclusive watch from one of the Le Mans 1 year ago or 2 years ago, and the watch is like super cool. It's like shaped, the face is like a speedometer. Very fun. Anyway, Charles went to Le Mans, only stopped for 4 hours, and he got to watch Ferrari bring home the first victory since 1965. Ford versus Ferrari, anyone? What a film. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure if this made him happy or sad. We need to bring the Le Mans guys over to F1, because like, they seem to know what they're doing. Also, side note, Antonio Giovinazzi was on the team that won for Ferrari. And I'm just so happy for Italian Jesus. Like, he deserves this. Also, both Charles and Carlos said they'd love to compete in Le Mans. I think this was even before they were winning. So, what I think is funny about this is that they would rather drive for 24 hours nonstop than to keep putting up with this shit. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Also, on Charles' post-Canadian Grand Prix, I saw a video of him jogging through Monaco with just the most perfect sound. What was the sound? Oh, Charles. I could watch him walk by every night looking fine for days. 4 days. Also, for some reason, speaking of walking by every night looking fine, there were for some reason like a lot of footage of drivers arriving to the front of a hotel in Montreal. Specifically, the Ferrari drivers climbing in and out of cars, which are so low to the ground. They're literally doing a full-ass squat to the ground every time. Like, my knees hurt watching them. But we saw Carlos and Charles both arrive. But the funny thing is when Charles arrived, he got out of his car and immediately started to say hi to fans. And then I guess someone in the corner just goes, "Hi, Charles." And he looks around and is so startled because it's just Alex and Lily casually standing there amongst this, like, gaggle of fans watching Charles greet everyone. And why is no one reacting to Alex and Lily? I understand the reaction to Charles, but Alex and Lily are right there. Lily is right there. Hello. I don't think I would have any chill if I were in the presence of Lily. She is the coolest. Anyway, Pierre has had quite a sporty adventure over the last few weeks. He was at the French Open final for Djokovic, saw him win. He was at the football match for the French national team, and this was funny. Laurent Rossi, head of Alpine, commented on the photo. I'm not gonna attempt to read the French. I mean, I can attempt to read the French. "Tu n'appelles plus les amis quand tu vas au stade?" Really good, I know. Basically, he's like, you're not taking your friends with you. And, like, honestly, the audacity for Laurent to shit all over Pierre, all over him in the media, and then be like, "Where's my invite to your, like, non-work related activities?" Dead at the audacity. Also, Pierre attended not a sport activity. He attended the Louis Vuitton show, Pharrell's Louis Vuitton show on the Giant Bridge, with Kika. Sat front row, and at first I was like, whoa, how did Pierre score a front row seat at a Louis Vuitton show that also had, like, Beyonce and Zendaya and Rihanna? But then I realized that the front row was literally the entire length of a bridge, so there was space for Pierre to sit up front. He looked great though, loved his outfit. Which is actually a great transition into Lewis. So before the Canadian Grand Prix, Lewis and Tom Holland were spotted getting dinner together in New York City. That's all. That's the entire update, but it was just cute, especially because, like, Tom is obsessed with Lewis, loves Lewis. So it was cute to see them, like, walking away from dinner. Since Canada, Lewis has also been making his rounds at Paris Fashion Week. He was at the same Louis Vuitton show where Zendaya was. He's had a very Spider-Man-y Gen Z few weeks, where he, at the Louis Vuitton show, he hung out with the Smith siblings, Willow and Jaden. He's friends with Will, so whatever. He sat with them, and then also Tyler, the creator, sat with them. They had a cute little photo op together. Love that for him. I do. He also has gone to the Wales Bonner show, where I think he sat next to Naomi Campbell. Big things happening for Lewis. And also Lewis looks great at all of these shows, but then again, like, we know that Lewis can wear a runway fit like nobody's business, so not a huge surprise, but I'm loving to see him, like, mingle with all the fashion icons. It's great. Speaking of fashion icons, Guan Yu was at the Dior show, since we're talking about Paris Fashion Week, which, by the way, was a hilarious show. I'm pretty sure that all the models popped up onto the runway at the exact same time, and then went back down. I think that was the whole show. I don't think anyone actually walked. Great stuff. But speaking of Guan Yu's fashion, he did a segment with Sky where he and Ted Kravitz spent the day together, and they went to work out, they got hot pot, and most importantly, they did some shopping where Guan Yu dressed Ted Kravitz in the most ridiculous outfit, just, like, fully decked him out in the most absurd thing he could find. And it was very much giving the same energy as James Corden doing the carpool karaoke with Harry Styles and, like, trying on the same fits as him, be like, this just doesn't work on me. Same thing. I wish Guan Yu had put on the same outfit and they walked side by side, because that would have been hilarious to see. Kudos to Ted for even attempting that outfit. It was insane. Lap 4, Wags. So Charles' girlfriend, who sort of made her official debut into the F1 world at the Monaco Grand Prix, obviously very adorable, obviously looks exactly like Charlotte and low-key Charles. Are they, like, does everyone from Monaco look the same? Because they all look the same. Anyway, the funniest TikTok I saw about this was a girl, I wish I could remember her name. She put, I'm gonna link it. But she posted, she posted a video where she's like, day one of trying to fix my posture because of Charles Leclerc's girlfriend. And I thought it was hilarious. Pretty sure Charles' girlfriends. I'm pretty sure Alex's posture is due to money and just like society and just like being rich in general. But it's a great thing to aspire to. And I think I'm actually going to show my physical therapist that video to see if I can get some Alex posture. I can't. It's not in my wheelhouse. Also, Carlos Sainz is 100% single. We've talked about Dax's opinions on this. I think it was actually corroborated by his ex, which was sad. They were very cute together. Side note, I think she corroborated this. Don't quote me on this, but she corroborated at about the same time that she did a campaign for Puma for their like motorsport inspired line, which is very bad timing, just like in general. Anyway, now that Carlos is single, I think we're going to see Dax's description of him come into full effect. Also, side note again, how many side notes have I had so far? Every time I hear Smooth Operator on TikTok and it's not a video about Carlos, it really throws me off. Like, that song is fully associated with Carlos now. Is that just me? Like, I can't hear that song without thinking of Carlos Sainz. Other relationships, I believe that Lewis and Shakira are still going strong, which I low-key love this couple. I think this is the first race she hasn't been at, obviously, like in an obvious way. But I think they're very cute. She's age appropriate. She's a pop star like he loves. Actually, I think they're a decade apart. But I just really hope this relationship continues to develop. I think it's very cute. And I think she needs to take a break from athletes. The only downside is that every time I see Lewis and think of Shakira, Shakira's song gets stuck in my head. And I really don't need Hips Don't Lie on repeat in my brain at all times. Also, this is like the very important part of this lap is that a box messaged me, and I've tried to do my due diligence about this, but other than some panicky tweets, I haven't found any definitive proof of this. But she asked if Lance Stroll has a new girlfriend. And there is a potential rumor that he is dating an Israeli model named Diane Schwartz, who was also at Chloe and Scotty's wedding. But I've yet to find, again, any evidence of this besides the really like a blurry picture of them next to each other and girls like losing their shit online about it. So if anyone has more evidence before I like definitively say like, yep, he's dating Diane Schwartz. If anyone has more definitive evidence of this that I have just somehow missed, please send it over at boxboxf1pod@gmail.com, on Instagram, on TikTok, any format. Please send me all you know about Lance's potential girlfriend so that I can help inform the public. Thank you for your service in advance. Okay, with that, we have concluded the digital warm-up. Okay, moving on to Canadian GP highlights. Okay, this wasn't from this year, but I cannot talk about the Canadian Grand Prix without talking about the most iconic moment in all Canadian history. Someone might come at me for that, but it is the most iconic moment for me because I love the drama. So, at the 2019 Canadian Grand Prix, Sebastian Vettel, throwback to him, was leading, but he got into like a bit of a fight and went off the track. And when he re-entered the track, he apparently re-entered dangerously, and it was like right where Lewis was. So eventually that earned him a 5-second penalty. And since this was at the end of the race, there was not enough time for him to build up a 5-second gap before he crossed the finish line, just the line, before he crossed the finish line, which automatically demoted him to P2 and gave Lewis the win. Seb very clearly did not agree with this take from the FIA. So like he stormed off after parking his car, did not do the post-race interviews. No one knew if he was going to go to the podium, but like he was. And on the way to the podium, he walks by Parc firm, right? He walks by where the cars are parked, sees out of the corner of his eye the number 1 sign in front of Lewis's car since he won. And he storms up, grabs the number 1 sign, and replaces it with a 2 in front of his car. And just like switches them before going back up to the podium ceremony. Dead. I think it's also funny when you think of like who Seb has become in the last couple of years at F1. He's like sassy and funny, but he's also so mature and put together. I know that's not who he always was. I know that's not been his reputation in F1, but like especially when you're new, like what's fresh in your memory is how wholesome and sweet Seb is. So to have this image of him is hilarious to me. And it's also like just such iconic pettiness that has yet to be repeated like in recent years. And I pray for the day where we see such pure, unhinged, chaotic pettiness once again. I pray. I love it because it's harmless, right? It's harmless. It's not like he like ran someone over. He just moved some signs around. I loved it. All right, on to 2023 Canadian Grand Prix. So obviously Max dominated. He even said that winning championships was getting boring in an interview and everyone just came at him. Honestly, anything Max says is going to get torn apart, whether it's his delivery, his face, I don't know what it is. I think it's nice that he's a well-rounded guy with like other interests. And also like who the fuck wouldn't be bored when you're just like cruising along by yourself with like no one even like potentially like challenging your win? Who wouldn't be bored? We're bored watching. Why wouldn't Max be bored doing it? Although this particular race, he did only win by 10 seconds instead of like the minimum 30 it's been for the rest of the year. And at first everyone was like, the grid's catching up. But actually he hit a bird that got stuck in his car. So I think that might have contributed to his slower performance. His clip talking about the suicidal birds in Canada is hilarious. He's like, I think all the birds in Canada are just suicidal. I saw several just fly directly onto the track and I kept telling them, go left. One did, one did not. And it got caught in his car and he drove the entire race with a bird stuck in his car. For some reason, the way I'm imagining this is like, you know, in Shrek when Fiona sings and like kills that bird and it just like explodes. Like she's like, and the bird's like, That's how I imagine this bird dying. It is horrifying, but also low-key hilarious, especially when he's talking about them as like suicidal birds, just like direct. We've heard about the suicidal beavers in Canada, but now apparently nature is out of control, apparently in Montreal. Anyway, Ferrari. So I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but like everyone's like, woohoo, Ferrari's strategy didn't suck. But like, I think what actually happened is that Ferrari just listened to their drivers. Like, I'm pretty sure at one point, they told Carlos to box, and Carlos was like, no, I don't think we should box. And then they just listened to him. Because, like, they're still not providing great options for strategy. The car is still porpoising like mad. Like, if you watch the Ferrari cars, it, like, hurts your head. They're just like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So nothing's actually been solved besides, like, they listened to their drivers. Or what actually I think happened is that the drivers stopped listening to them and just did what they wanted. We still got the debrief at the end of the race, which clearly means that they weren't that satisfied, even though both Charles and Carlos shouted out the team. Carlos went so far as to say that we should be giving credit to the team when we're so quick to call them out when things go wrong. He's like, you should be giving credit to the team. I think saying Ferrari finally got it right is a bit generous for this situation. Charles and Carlos finally stood their ground is more like what happened. Really, Ferrari wasn't allowed to get it wrong. That's what happened. Moving on, George Russell. So George Russell was the first person to crash when he just like rammed into the wall out of nowhere, caused the yellow flag. There were rims and debris flying everywhere. Miraculously, he somehow made it back out on track and almost actually finished the race, but he eventually had to DNF. The car wasn't able to hack it. I think this is so funny, and many people have pointed out, but it's so funny to me. After Barcelona, he made a very direct and very aggressive comment that was quote, maybe 3 drivers on the grid who you wouldn't feel comfortable going against. There's a trust between most of the drivers. I don't think those 3 drivers have the spatial awareness of others, end quote. And then he promptly hit the wall. What's so comical about this is that not only was this the first crash after his comment, which was caused by him accidentally slamming into the wall, he has a very, very torrid history of like randomly colliding with drivers, walls, specifically at the start. Like if there's any driver that lacks spatial awareness, it is 100% George Russell. And yet it's unclear and highly unlikely that he counts himself among the 3 that he name dropped, or not name dropped, but alluded at. Overall, hilarious though. Lacking spatial awareness is like George's middle name. Have you seen him at a start? He's chaotic AF. Anyway, Lando Norris was given a penalty for unsportsmanlike behavior, and the commentators were super flabbergasted about this because apparently Lando is one of the nicest drivers on the grid. Which, I mean, like, let's be honest, sportsmanlike behavior, nicest driver on the grid are not synonymous with each other. We have all heard Lando sass. And Lando and the Lando girlies can say that it's misunderstood all they want, but the dude's got edge to a lot of his comments, which isn't like a bad thing necessarily, but it's true. He can be rude. Whether it's intentional, unintentional, meant to be a joke, meant to be like whatever, he says some rude stuff. Don't come at me. Anyways, this situation in particular was annoying because unsportsmanlike is super vague. This particular penalty was for driving deliberately slowly during a safety car to give enough time for both McLarens to pit, which is a bit of like an assumption on the FIA's part. Like they could have just given him a penalty for driving unnecessarily slowly, but you're supposed to drive slowly during the safety car. Whatever. This is a rule that I might not be fully aware of, fine, but like make the penalty about the rule, not just unsportsmanlike behavior. That implies that there isn't like a specific rule about the situation. You can't just have like an umbrella rule for stuff you don't like. I guess you can. I guess they can do whatever they want, but it also just seems like you need a lot of premeditation for like slowing down to that extent and somehow being able to communicate that on the radio. I don't know, whatever. In the theme of vagueness, though, Lando's radio message about the penalty was like equally open-ended. The engineer goes, "You have a 5-second penalty." And Lando goes, "For what?" And the engineer goes, "I'll tell you later." And Lando goes, "Or you could tell me now." And the engineer goes, "No, I'll tell you later." See? Sass. Which, to be fair, I understand. I would also be like, can you just tell me now? But I think the engineers were like, what the fuck is unsportsmanlike behavior? We should probably sort this out. To be fair, though, this entire thing was followed up by like the sassiest drive ever, as Lando like did some multiple like saucy overtake attempts, some successful, some less so, but he was still trying to overtake as he crossed the finish line. Like he was on a roll. It's great to see him so feisty. I love when a driver gets feisty. It's great. He probably would have been feistier if he got told that he was being unsportsmanlike, but whatever. That smoothly segues into the next installment of this drama, which moved over to Instagram when F1 made a post about his unsportsmanlike behavior penalty, and Lando commented on the posting, writing, "Throw him in the slammer." Oh, all right. Sassy, I told you. All right, so Alex Albon had a phenomenal race. Out of this world. He held up like a DRS train for like half the race. There was like 7 cars stuck behind him. And like one tiny mistake and he would have lost a shit ton of places. And Alex won. And he also, let's not forget, during qualifying, he had an exceptional performance. He was the only one to predict the tires correctly. He was the fastest in Q2. I think if he had been given the opportunity to do a fast lap, Lord knows where he would have ended up in Q3. So like truly like exceptional work from Alex this weekend, especially since we've all seen the Williams underbelly. We know what it looks like. We know it's not a lot to work with. In fact, I think we're seeing Logan use the car the way it was built to be used. Like, I think that is the Williams performance level. Alex is just performing miracles. He won driver of the day, and I will support that forever and always. He's a dreamboat of a driver. I think it also just proves how valuable a good environment is. I remember when he was at Red Bull, and I always thought, like, he's too soft for this. But, like, in the nicest way possible. Like, I meant that as a good thing. Because, like, look, Valtteri was tough enough to take it for years. And it chipped away at his soul until there was, like, nothing left. Like, it broke him, but he was tough enough to take it in the moment, right? I'm so glad it didn't happen to that scale with Alex. I'm so glad it was such a super short stint and he was able to recover. And he's now able to be in an environment that respects him, supports him, where he can thrive. And he is thriving. We can finally see the full potential of Alex. Actually, not the full potential. We're seeing so much potential from him with a car that's not allowing him to exercise his full potential. Imagine Alex in a car where he could do that. Imagine. Anyway, the last thing I want to talk about from the Canadian Grand Prix is the Lewis, Max, Fernando enemies to lover trope. So, like, Lewis has well-documented feuds with both Max and Fernando, and yet we've witnessed somewhat of a 180 when it comes to how these drivers interact. To me, it's a very obvious enemies to lover trope. We have the cool-down room chats. We have the selfie Lewis snapped at the press conference, which also made it to his grid. We have him talking about what an honor it is to be a part of this podium, which actually, in his defense, it is super cool that there is like 11 world championships between the three of them. Very awesome. And I'm also like, I personally am very happy and like susceptible to fall victim to like this rose-tinted image of them all being friends. But there are so many whispers of mind games. Daniel, during his broadcast, which is a whole situation in itself, but Daniel, during his broadcast, was like laughing at them in the cool down room because he was saying that Lewis was low-key playing a mind game there where he was asking Max about the car, thinking he could catch him off guard and get some deets. It didn't work. Not because I think Max caught on to the mind game, but also I think that's how he would have responded to it. Dias, friend of the pod, my friend from the UK, said that Lewis has realized that there's no point in being mad when you're not competing with someone, and that this entire relationship between Max and Lewis is like one giant orchestrated mind game of like keep your friends close and your enemies closer, so that by the time Lewis catches up in speed to Fernando and Max, they won't see it coming. I'm going to posit a theory, though, that it's like somewhere in between here. Like, yes, I think Lewis has realized there's no point in being mad. Time has passed. They're not really competing, etc., etc. Some of it, however, might be a mind game. Like, I'll accept Daniel's theory about like getting info on the car. But in terms of like a long game, mind game situation, Fernando and Max are not really the people you could successfully mind game. Like, I don't think being friendly with Max is going to change anything at all for Max. Like, he's just gonna keep driving, right? Just keep driving. Just keep driving. My name's Maxie. Here's my story. I live for the sim and I'm still gonna win. You can't mind game Max because he's just like not paying attention enough to know you're mind gaming him. Also, Fernando is the king of fucking mind games. Forget King of Spain. He's the king of fucking mind games. Like, let's take a moment just specifically from this race to appreciate when Lewis was released from his pit stop right in front of Fernando in the pit lane. And to be fair, it was close. But Fernando was so dramatically like swerving his car. He was like, oh, to give the illusion that they were closer than they actually were. It didn't work. That the stews didn't react. But how hilarious. And even better to come from this entire thing was the shot of Toto imitating Fernando swerving from the garage. It was so great. Too long didn't read. No one here is BFFs, but Max and Lewis got on before 2021, and I think we've just reverted to that. But I do love a mind game, and please feel free to send me all your mind game theories because I love the drama. And mind games are just another form of drama. All right, moving on. Austrian GP track walk. Mini little track walk just to wet our palates before next week. So it takes place in Spielberg, Austria. The original Austrian GP circuit was called the Austrian, which was a wild ride, but was revamped in the mid-90s to become shorter and more current, and like they really shortened it. A lap is only 2 miles. For reference, Baku is like 4.3 miles, and most of them are somewhere in between that. But the Red Bull Ring is like a super fun track. There's like a whole collection of corners in a row, and then there's some straights, and just really gives you a whole experience in a small package. Okay. Short King. And the fact that it's Red Bull's home means that we're going to get a lot from the Red Bull boys. So here's to getting some quality ensemble content from Max, Yuki, Daniel, Checo, and like, yeah, also Nick. In terms of predictions though, honestly, should I just go wild and say that Max won't win this race? Like, honestly, you can't make a fun prediction these days without just entirely making something up. So let's just say Max is not going to win. And this is actually a hopeful prediction, but I really hope Lance proves the haters wrong. But there are thunderstorms predicted for next week, so maybe McLaren will like rock up out of nowhere and like take some extra points. A podium, perhaps. That's pushing it. I don't know what's more likely, for McLaren to get a podium or for Max not to win. He's on the podium, just not winning. TBD. However, speaking of thunderstorms, I know that the Canadian Grand Prix was all about like the anticipation of rain, but literally a few days prior to that, there were all these wildfires around the Montreal area, which is like, is anyone noticing a biblical theme here? COVID, disease, death of the firstborn, Red Bull's first champion Seb retiring from the sport. Imola got canceled for the floods. And even though we didn't get rain or fire in Montreal, we did get suicidal birds. It's an ominous theme. It is the 10 plagues of F1. Who will be the Moses to take us out to the promised land? TBD. It is very 10 plaguey though. Like, let's be honest, there's a lot of natural shit happening. Anyway, I guess that concludes our like wonky Canadian, Austrian in-between episode. Even though I won't be able to record a full Austrian debrief, I will be sharing my thoughts on social because I'll still be watching. So make sure you're following me at BoxBoxF1Pod on TikTok and Instagram so you don't miss anything. And make sure you subscribe to the pod, leave a comment if you're enjoying it, and share with any potential boxes so you don't miss when I'm back for Silverstone in just a couple of weeks. Until then, Box.